he was saying U.S. Bank clears 300 billion in transactions a day. So he's saying these online ones still don't compete. And like these guys are the most monopolistic guys you can imagine. Like he's saying the banks are, in the next 12 to 18 months, you're going to see 5 to 6 of the top banks go out of business and get bought because they're reconsolidating because they don't have enough control over prices if there's too many of them. But he was making a really good point about, like, well, PayPal right now, he's like, PayPal, he's like, every transaction that gets cleared, ultimately, in the end, 99% chance it goes through one of us big 5 banks. You know, ultimately, there's some backing account in one of these. And he's like, right now, PayPal uses the same bank-to-bank you know, communication ports that banks use to talk to each other. It's like, okay, well, you know, 18 months from now, there's going to be 5 of us that control 95% of the business in the world, and we have this trust between each other because we know our fraud system, whatever. He's like, you know, PayPal currently enjoys that luxury, but fraud rate on PayPal is much higher. It's like, you know, we really need to start charging them a fee to cover fraud expenses, right?
But you know,
so I mean, that's the thing is, right now they feel they're in such a strong position because they're central that the minute they see a threat from these other guys, they can just, you know, screw them up.
Did you ever hear that PayPal originally, the original business plan made it so that their revenue derived essentially from float?
From float, it does. Yeah, it does. And like 40% of their expenses are anti-fraud. So they don't even consider themselves a payment clearing house. They consider themselves an anti-fraud house.
Well, they're under severe but apparently not too effective attack.
Well, phishing has been costing them more and more every year.
I see.
Yeah, it is having an impact on them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of these things, like they fight it with technology, they try to fight it with regulations and so on. And
I haven't got I do think search the guy out and kill him yet, though.
Unfortunately, yeah, you can't just push a button and electrocute him. No, because the interesting thing, this guy was talking about the way these scamming networks work. It is awesome. Like, it has evolved so much since I was involved in that stuff. Like, and I just can't, like, to me, I think there's no way law enforcement can ever stop it.
Wozniak never got busted. That's why we have computers today.
Well, and it's much worse now. Like, there's guys, like, they don't even have to know much about computers, and they just, like, you can download this kit that says, like, okay, I'm going to take Adobe Photoshop because I know people like it, and I download this little kit that says, stick this Trojan horse key grabber bot on the front of Adobe Photoshop. Stick Adobe Photoshop up on the file sharing networks. 100 people download it, they install it, now their machine is my bot, my zombie in my network. Calls back to the IRC channel. I just farm bots. There's people whose whole job is they're just bot farmers, right? Then they go into these like PayPal or these eBay-like networks, and they sell access to their bot networks. They'll be like, okay, I'll give you 10 days with my 10,000 bots for X $400, and then they use a stolen PayPal account to transfer the $400. Boom! Now a guy rents the bots, and he says, okay, I'm going to stick up, I've got a kit that I can download to make U.S. Bank look-alike login pages, and I'm going to do phishing attacks by making all these bots pretend to be web servers and sending out spam mails from them. So he does his little thing, collects all his credit card numbers. He goes on and he auctions those off. Somebody else uses them for whatever purposes, and like when they want to defraud money, there's like this whole network of people that their whole job is, they're called cashiers, because most of these people who do this crap on the back end don't need to speak very good English, right? So it could be, you know, some farmer in Fujian or whatever, right? Then the cashier's got to be a guy who like lives in America and looks like he might have a bank account at TD Bank, who can walk in there and withdraw all the money. And for that, he gets 50% cut. So it's like, it's just a booming economy. And this guy was given the stats on, like every week they collect, I think, 800 new pieces of malware. They run it through 29 virus scanners, and only 18% of it is caught. After 60 days, only 50% is caught. So, like basically, they can own any machine they want. There's nothing we can do about it. And he's explaining, like, they don't want the machines to crash. He's like, he's seen them take over major routers on the internet, major hub routers, and fix bugs in them because they don't want the router to go down, because then their marketplace goes down. And it's like, you know, law enforcement has little incentive to do anything about it.
Unless they want their networks.
I think the banks are really, you know, the thing that's starting to bother me is the banks are really sucking everything out of the economy with the credit cards, you know, because they get it from the merchant, then they get it from, you know, they get the consumer with their interest, which they, I mean, when I grew up, 20% was usury, but now it's business as usual. And God, somebody must be getting incredibly rich. Then they go.
What if they weren't so inefficient?
Then they go to Washington and they say, well, you can't declare bankruptcy anymore. We're going to get you anyway.
Well, that's what they're talking about though now with the real estate bubble. These guys are predicting that either Washington Mutual or Wells Fargo or both will go out of business in the next 12 months, because in this big mortgage boom in the housing bubble, everybody's remortgaging, refinancing, and this is where most of the business of those two banks comes from. And they're saying there's like 800 domestic banks in the U.S. now, and they're so hyper competitive that they're like offering, like even today they're offering 0 down, low interest loans to people who just don't qualify.
Like
and
me.
so they're saying like there's so many bad loans out there. As soon as the default rate hits, you're going to start seeing bankruptcy after bankruptcy after bankruptcy. Well, a lot of these are going to have to be bailed out by the government or by Fannie Mae, because basically they're like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are these mortgage wholesalers who buy the mortgages from these other companies, and they've lowered their underwriting standards. And so this is where the consolidation is going to come from, is that they've gone so long with lax practices that the ones who weren't conservative are all going to go out of business, get snapped up by the bigger ones.
I wish I could find some of those easy loans.
Yeah.
Really.
I think the next month is your last chance, because interest. They're saying like the spread between prime rate and lending rate is bigger than it's ever been in history for longer than ever. So the interest rates have to catch up. And
Well,
it's just
but the thing about it is that the trickle-down thing isn't entirely erroneous. I mean, that money, something has to happen to that stolen money.
Fireplace.
Well, that makes it all good.
Keeps Bill Gates warm at night.
That's funny how the tradition in my youth, it was like Rockefeller or something. Now the word is, you're playing poker and Bill Gates walks by and throws $1,000 in the pot. What kind of hand do you have to stay in? Well, you don't even need to look at your cards. You've got an $18 pot with $1,000 thrown in. Shit, anything.
Yeah.
Well, I think it just goes to show that the top of the food chain is where to be. They're getting immensely rich.
Except that you can only eat so much.
Well, no, it's not what you eat. It's what you buy. It's what you got 10 houses. You got all this luxury.
Would you like to have 10 houses?
Personally, no, but
well, that's what I'm talking about.
There's lots of people that would.
I don't know, man. Not when they get
Well, there's lots of people that would want to have one house that would do whatever you tell them to do to get it. I mean, that's the problem with the disparities, right? Is the abuse of power.
But the disparities begin to disappear because of Walmart and.
Well, that's the thing about like U.S. Bank. Like people complain. Everybody's like, "Oh,
Walmart
are making
disparity disappear."
It's like, well, wait a minute. You are the #1 shareholder in the oil company through your retirement fund or whatever. Like, okay, fine. Like if it's a public company, I don't mind. That's why I say like 100% death tax I support, because the disparities always happen. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And if you can pass that on from generation to generation through like a trust or something, then you end up with a King Louis XIV situation or something. Where you have people abusing power who didn't even play the game. And
but now with the increased number of connections, when the guy gets to be King Louis, he is so dependent on so many more people than Idi Amin was to keep his thing going that it spreads.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, it has in this country. I mean,
well, but a lot of the reason it spread in this country too is, I mean, there's other reasons. Like a lot of the people who came here came with nothing, and the system was made to allow opportunity to occur. We haven't had a lot of chances for intergenerational wealth transition, and where we have, you end up with the Bush family who landed on the Mayflower, and
Now on the beer.
No, GW and
Charted bushes.